Our guy Darius Butler on the show, who crushed the draft. He'll tell you. Also, I miss New York more than ever before. Jets, you got Giants, Knicks. Hey, we are talking about sports all day right now. NFL draft gave a lot of love to a lot of teams. The Texans and Seahawks mainly on Friday morning, but then the other rounds happened, and then there's the undrafted guys to consider. So who stole the draft? Who won? What was the most underrated move? We've got Paige Dimakos joining us as well, and she'll give us her perspective. We've got Darius Butler on the program. I was in New York over the weekend. Went from Kansas City to New York for a hot second. Hamilton, you and I flew together. We had which is crazy to think that you and I, year in, year out, we've never had a travel experience together.
And that was, it was truly something special, from leaving the suitcase just at security, forgetting to put it on the belt, to walking completely past the gate. It was everything you would hope for.
What do you mean? I thought we had a great time together. We flew together to New York.
We did. Yeah, we did. We had a great time.
Yeah, we had a great time. And then I got there. I landed. I caught a show at the Beacon. I saw Bono performing Stories of Surrender. Highly recommend. Not a ton of dates left. I went to my best friend's wedding out there. Sans Dionne Warwick and Dermot Mulroney, but shout out to them nonetheless. The only person, Hamilton, who had a better weekend in New York was Aaron Rodgers, who really did spend the better part of this past week with new teammates in the facility, around the facility, and he's living his best life, and he looks better than he's ever looked. But let's first check in with his head coach. Listen, everybody's talking about the fit. Where'd Hamilton go? Can we not get rid of Hamilton? Where is he? There he is. Everybody's talking about, what the fit is, and Aaron and the receivers and all of this. And what did I say? It's really going to come down to, LaFleur was pivotal in what that was going to look like post-McCarthy, and now he's going to have to sort it out with the transition to Jordan Love. Same thing with Robert Saleh, though. Can he make it work, keep it together when it might fall apart or there's some adversity, in their division, in the AFC as a whole? And here is Saleh's reaction when he was asked about what it's like to have Aaron in the building. Let's take a look.
We started with getting a Hall of Fame quarterback, and now you go through the draft. Could you just describe personnel-wise what it's like to go through? Not many coaches get to.
No, it's been a fun week. It's been a fun week. He's already made his presence felt with regards to meetings and input and just the communication and the discussions on all the different things that we're trying to get accomplished on offense. So, he is a tremendous human. First and foremost, Aaron is. And, just listening, there's little subtle things I'm not going to get into, but he definitely cares about people. And you can tell in the way he speaks to people. And so really, really fortunate that he's here.
Hamilton, what have I told you about Aaron Rodgers? He doesn't want to be seen as just an athlete, right? He is bigger than that. He wants to have an impact that is bigger than that, as seen by his many trips to sort of self-enlightenment and improvement and knowing himself more and becoming a better human. For that to be Saleh's first bite about him is like nailing it, knowing what you're dealing with, who you're dealing with, not really making it about football, just embracing him for who he is and this energy. I mean, it is not often in the past 5, 6, 7 years that Aaron Rodgers, especially the past 2 or 3, has been described as the positive force coming in. Him just showing up to OTAs is kind of hilarious because it's something he's not done in past years with the Packers. And I'm thinking about Packers fans, Hammy, and I'm a little like, man, that must suck, because even the look of Aaron right now, if you look at Aaron, we're not going to pull up stills from what he's looked like when he had like the long hair and he was sort of scraggly, but he physically looks re-energized. If you're watching him at the Rangers game, he's got the smirk, the smile, but it's more genuine. There's not this like chip on his shoulders. His eyes are, look at that smile. That's a genuine, let's go. Let's go. What did I say? He's gonna eat it up. He's got the expressions, but he looks like he got himself a stylist. He looks like $1 million, new man. Sure. Aaron, we're not doing the long hair anymore. It's over.
It really does.
Go ahead.
It seems like there is a weight that's been lifted off of him, and not just because of the hair, but everything that he went through in Green Bay. It has to take a toll on you over the course of it's been about 3 years now that this saga's drawn on. So to put that behind you, to get a fresh start somewhere, it really does seem like he's refreshed right now, like you said. And I think also you talked about Salah bridging the gap and all the things he needs to do for Aaron. I'm sure having Nathaniel Hackett in that building has to be a big help too. Somebody who Rodgers has such a comfort level with.
Well, he's got Alan Lazard, and they're like on, Instagram stories at this Rangers game, having the time of their lives. We love that. And yeah, it's everything Aaron wants. He wants to be accepted. He wants to be seen as a human. He wants to be loved and trusted. And he wants people to trust in him and build around him. And he got that support in adding the Lazards and adding pieces, which is something that he didn't have there. And you've got your coach embracing physically your GM, thanking you for this gift of an MVP, one of the best quarterbacks ever. And then you have these young cats who I really think, and I forget who I talked to about this on the show, they're going to revitalize him. They're going to give him new, young vibes. And New York does that to people. New York eats some people alive. Everyone says he's not going to mesh with the media. Yeah, when things go bad, it's going to be fireworks. It's going to be amazing. But I think Aaron's going to eat it up. These kids are changing their Twitter avatars to the pictures of you from Cal because they're so excited to play with you. And so that's all going on. And and then there's also the other thing of this, and that's the other team. Because the Jets are one thing, and, the Rangers are another thing, and the Knicks certainly are another thing, the hottest ticket in town. But you're Giants, and you've been in New York your entire life, or at least in the area, and they're crushing it right now, too.
Yeah, they really are, and it's funny because they kind of go back to where they like to be, kind of under the radar with all the Rodgers stuff and that dominating the headlines, and as you said, the other New York teams doing so well. But they had a heck of a draft themselves, and I take the draft grade stuff with a grain of salt, but PFF gave this an A+, and you'd be hard pressed to find anybody who has anything negative to say here. Because again, the Giants started with the 25th pick off of a playoff appearance last year. It's hard to have a big splash in the draft when you're picking that late, but they found a way to do it. Getting Deonte Banks, the speedy corner from Maryland, John Michael Schmitz. They haven't really been able to nail down that center position since Sean O'Hara left. I don't know what Schmitz's quarter zip game is like, but he's a phenomenal football player, and the consensus is he's a guy who can be their center for the next 10 years, just set it and forget it. And then trading up in the third round to get Jalen Hyatt, a guy who some people had as a late first-round pick, early second-round guy. They saw him slip into the third round. Joe Shane moved up, got aggressive, snagged him, and it's the piece that the Giants really didn't have in this receiving core last year, the speed threat, the deep threat that can really stretch the field for Daniel Jones off of play action. Averaged 19 yards a catch last year at Tennessee, 15 touchdowns. Yeah. A really talented player to get in the third round. So I think the Giants absolutely crushed this draft as well. It's going to be a really fun year football-wise in New York.
This Hyatt kid's a deep threat guy?
Oh, yeah. Big time.
Yeah, that's what I was reading about him. So I'm excited about what they're doing. Obviously, it's kind of like if I'm thinking about it from like the AFC perspective, now's the time for Buffalo to go get DeAndre. The fact that trade didn't happen, I think we're all sort of scratching our heads. We talked to Von Miller. He said he'd been working and talking to the guys up there about getting it done. Like, be the team that's going to sort of pump the brakes on what this Jet squad is doing. I mean, these odds over at FanDuel Sportsbook with the Jets as high as they are in the AFC, all things considered, it's super interesting. So I would say the same thing about tempering expectations for the Giants. We want to be excited about them. They outperformed what we thought last year was going to be a rebuilding year. And you got to look at the team that had a better draft, I think, than the Giants were the Eagles. And they're still the top dogs in that division. And I don't know in what world, maybe it's the Niners, quarterback questions. We talked about Seahawks being a sneaky team to maybe, put the kibosh on them just a little bit and douse their hopes with some water. But I mean, hell of a draft by Howie. Again, like they didn't let up even a little bit. And his strategy over the last couple of drafts, it's not some crazy thing, right? It's pretty simple. He watched Georgia put together one of the best defenses in college football history. So he went and grabbed, as many of those guys as he could. That was literally the strategy. Over the last 2 drafts alone, the Eagles have taken 5 defensive players from Georgia, 5, including 3 of them in the first round. So basically, they could end up having half of that historic 2021 national championship winning defense starting for them at some point soon. And it's not just, it's not just like novelty. These guys are all dominant players, and they all fit significant needs. And I do think there's something to say about chemistry and having that carry over as being sort of a benefit here. Jalen Carter, there's a massive hole, right, with Javon Hargrave, and he leaves in free agency. Nolan Smith, who Von Miller loves, he gives the Eagles defense another big-time guy off the edge, and Ringo gives them secondary depth that they really need, because we're like, who's going to fill in that C.J. Gardner-Johnson sort of situation to the Lions? So I don't know what you think about this, but, you know, it's a job well done to keep grabbing these Georgia guys. I like it.
Yeah, and you even look at what they did last year, grabbing a guy like Nakobe Dean, who slipped a little bit. Some people had as a first-round pick. They got him in the 3rd round. And, you know, you talked about a lot this offseason, the people that they lost, like losing a TJ Edwards. Now Nakobe Dean has a year under his belt, was able to sit behind him, can step into that starting role for them. Yeah. So there is a lot of talent that they were able to snag from the Bulldogs, and that defense is going to be something special this year.
He didn't do what I wanted him to do, of course, which was get Budda Baker or draft Bijan, who could not draft, or trade for Derrick Henry. That's another thing we're like, oh, snap, that'd be fun. But he did make a splash on the trade market. Maybe it wasn't as big as those splashes would have been, but let's not pretend that getting DeAndre Swift isn't a great thing. He's super talented. It's a deal with the Lions that they made. And yes, he's been a bit banged up, but when he is healthy, he's super dynamic, and he gives the Eagles, you know, the starting running back that they've sort of been missing since they, you know, parted ways with Miles Sanders. So it brings it all full circle, and I'm going to give you a guess on where DeAndre went to college. That's right, the Bulldogs taking over Philadelphia. And from Bulldogs to Bengals, Hamilton will have you back in the show. We got Darius Butler and Paige coming up. But let's talk a little bit about the Bengals, shall we? Okay, what are the downsides of having another tremendous season, solid season, more than solid season, and making it back to the AFC Championship game is that you end up having to pick at the end of the first round, and you don't get talked about much throughout the process. But we do have to shout out what Duke Tobin and company were able to swing this weekend, because the Orlando Brown Jr. signing was huge, and it completed since he's overhauled the O-line. Sure, I've been a little nervous over the past couple weeks and months seeing the Bengals have to lose and part ways and say goodbye to so many starters. I'm talking about your Bates. That one still hurts. Von Bell. Ugh. Hayden Hurst. Even Eli Apple. These guys are not easy to replace. But when you look at what they did in the draft, it begins to take shape, and it makes sense. Myles Murphy is so is inconsistent, right? It's been questioned, it's one of his weaknesses, but he does have a ceiling as any edge rusher in this draft. Get the potential out of him, turn the talent into a consistent playmaker, and you got this. DJ Turner out of Michigan, he can fly. Here in a 4.26, guys, and he gives the Bengals a much-needed speed upgrade on defense. Charlie Jones, a receiver out of Purdue, we talked about him before the draft. He led the entire country in receptions this past year. And then there's Jordan Battle, one of the best last names in the draft, and he might be the most critical piece to all of this because the Bengals lost both of their safeties, of course, this offseason. So I got the chance to talk to him last week, and I loved hearing him talk about the game and what he's bringing to the team. Take a listen. Jordan Battle, you tell me, what is the strongest part of your game?
Yeah, I would just say my smarts on the field, how I play off instinct, how I can be a versatile guy. I can be moved in the box. I could be a deep field safety. I could play in the slot. So just being versatile and being smart and studying film and kind of knowing what the offense is giving me before I even play the game. Just going into the game with confidence and being comfortable out there.
So it's not fair to say that he's Jesse Bates or can be Jesse Bates, but if you listen to what he's saying right there, he won't be Bates out the gates, but he just described everything about Jesse that made him so valuable and so unique and such an integral part of the Bengals defense over the last 5 years. So this was a draft the Bengals needed to nail if they want to get back to the Super Bowl after how hard this offseason hit them. And I honestly don't think it could have gone much better. So now, get the extension done for Joey B. That is all we were waiting for. The neglect with Joey B. We're talking Rodgers, we're talking Lamar, all of this. Get the Joey B. deal done. Coming up here on the program, Mr. Shutdown City himself. That's right, our FanDuel friend Darius Butler joining us. We'll talk draft. We'll talk what the Colts did. We'll talk a little bit about the Patriots and why they are such a DB making and perfecting factory next. Hey everybody, FanDuel, the only sportsbook app where you can bet the Kentucky Derby. Right now, all customers can get a no-sweat Derby bet up to $20. That's right, you can get up to $20 back if your Derby win bet doesn't win. Head to FanDuel and get your no-sweat bet in for the Kentucky Derby, where our show will be Thursday, Friday, no show Saturday. Oh, but we'll be there. Hats and all. We got it. Love it. To break down more of the NFL draft, let's bring in a very good friend, a 2009 draft pick for the New England Patriots, who went on to play defensive back for 9 seasons in the NFL, co-host of the Man to Man podcast, Darius Butler. How are you?
I am great, Kay. How you doing on this beautiful Monday?
Beautiful, rainy Monday in LA. Nothing better, of course. We want to get into all of the things. But let's get into the Colts here. They drafted a quarterback, right? Despite all of the rumors that, it was going to be Will Levis, but they, get Richardson. What makes him the right fit? Now, let's remember, Anthony Richardson's the guy that I said I would take him number 1 overall because I'm going to swing big for the talent.
Yeah, I mean, he's kind of like one of those early startups you can bet on out there in Silicon Valley. He could be boom or bust. It seems like going to be a Hall of Famer or a bust. Nowhere in between with this guy. Unbelievable athlete, freak athlete at the position. Obviously, you know what Shane Steichen did with Jalen Hurts out in Philly. But I think in Philly, it started with that O-line. So we got to get production out of that O-line to protect him and let him figure out how to play quarterback on this level. Young kid, only 20 years old. But the sky's the limit with his athletic ability. Jonathan Taylor should be healthy in the backfield behind him. The big guys outside with Pittman and Pierce. And then you went and got that little guy, Josh Downs, out of North Carolina, who I absolutely loved in this draft as well. I think Reggie Wayne, the wide receivers coach there, future Hall of Famer, said he was the best wide receiver in this class. So I love the Anthony Richardson pick. I know the sportsbook had Will Levis locked going to the Colts, which had me sweating bullets. But I'm glad we went with Anthony Richardson out of Florida. I love it.
Wow. What do they do with Richardson, though? Because I was talking to Chris Collinsworth early on in the draft process, and he's like, he and everybody are like, we want him to develop. He's got all the talent in the world. The best situation for him is to sit behind someone. How do they handle Richardson with the Colts? Because he might be the day 1 starter, or do they ease him in?
Yeah, I mean, ideally, that's the route you want to go. You want to ease your quarterback in and let him learn kind of behind the quarterback. I think Hendon Hooker, that draft pick out in Detroit, was a great one. Even Levis, he may have the chance to learn a little bit. But I'm throwing Anthony Richardson out there day 1. I can't have him. No shot to Gardner Minshew, but the quarterback carousel that the Indianapolis Colts and their fan base have dealt with over the last 5-6 years since Luck hung it up. Throw our guy out there now. Let's see what we got. Let him figure it out. He is an incredible athlete, so he can cause some havoc for the defenses just with his athleticism alone. Yeah. But I say you let him figure it out, learn, throw him in the fire early, and just let him learn as a pro.
Wow. I mean Minshew,
why not?
Because you have Gardner Minshew, who's a capable starter, and he knows the Steichen offense.
We know what we got with Gardner, Kay, okay? and I love him. If we need him, I love that he's there. But Anthony Richardson, put him out there day 1. We got a bunch of young quarterbacks in that AFC South right now. Trevor Lawrence, he kind of came into his own in second year last year. You got C.J. Stroud, who's going to be a rookie, who we expect to start day 1. Will Levis could possibly beat out Ryan Tannehill. I think Mike Vrabel said it's pretty much an open competition out there. So while this kind of AFC South quarterback is kind of a new era there, let's get our guy out there and figure it out.
Will Levis goes to the Titans. Big storyline, but now I don't really care. I'm like, is he going to start this year? Well, because everyone's like, even in our production meeting, it's what do you make of that happening? Like, it's over. Yeah. I really believe everybody goes where they're supposed to go, and now it's what do I look forward to, right? Do you think, is it really a competition? How close is the competition between him and Ryan Tannehill, who we also, if we're going to use the Darius Butler logic, we know what Ryan Tannehill is? Yeah.
I mean, you drafted Malik Willis in the 3rd round, and he had a shot last year. Now, he didn't play well. I don't think he was honestly close to ready at playing. Was that all on him? Was it some coaching? I know they moved on from their OC from last year. But I think Will Levis, you draft a guy at the top of the 2nd round, he's going to have a chance. And Vrabel, I don't think he would lie. He was going to have a chance to compete. And I didn't think Will Levis was a 1st-round quarterback coming in this draft. He has the measurables. He looks incredible walking into a stadium, 6'4", 230. He has the huge arm. He does have a compact release, but can he consistently be accurate? Can he consistently make good decisions? And then what does he do when that play kind of breaks down? That was my biggest worry with him, those second reaction plays. So Tannehill, he's kind of, his back is against the wall, and he's going to be playing for, you know, another opportunity to be a starter in this league, I believe. So we may get the best football that we've seen out of Tannehill, but at the same time, Will Levis, it's a new opportunity, a new league. Can he figure it out? A lot of people made a lot of excuses for him and why he produced, how he did in Kentucky last year. But I think he'll have a legit shot to win that job down there in Tennessee.
But you're talking like before. I think they start with Tannehill, and if things go slowly or badly, then you make the switch and you can see what you have in Levis. I don't think it's like a training camp competition. Do you?
I think it's open, Kay. I think from the minute Will Levis get in there, I think when they drafted him, probably on the phone call, or maybe after he got off. Actually, I'm just thinking about the Will Levis phone call now. But probably after that initial one, when he calmed down a little bit, they probably told him, hey, Will, you're going to have opportunity to come in here and win a starting job. And that's what you want as a player. And like you said, you go where you're meant to go. And now, everybody we saw Aaron Rodgers sit in the draft room. We saw Lamar Jackson sit in the draft room. Geno Smith, we saw him sit in the draft room for 2 days. So, you go where you need to go and you get opportunity in this league. That's the best thing about it.
The more I think about it, the more I think you're right. Because I think even letting Tannehill out there and starting, you cannot have a bad season because then you will be picking near the top of the draft again. Mm-hmm. And Tennessee, do not pick a quarterback 3 straight years. That's what it would be.
Can't do it.
Can't do it. They got to get your boy. That is not a good look for anybody down there with the Titans organization. Speaking of Tennessee, Hendon Hooker. C.J. Stroud was your boy. First of all, did you take a victory lap when everybody shut up and C.J. Stroud went number 2? Because I know you said he was your favorite guy in the draft. But then Hendon Hooker, we're talking about fits and people going where you're supposed to go. Do we like him with the Lions as much as you liked him at Tennessee?
Yeah, Hendon Hooker. C.J. Stroud, first of all, was a no-brainer at 2. I hate the narratives and stuff that they throw out in the draft.
Right.
But Hendon Hooker, Hendon Hooker, I love that pick for the Lions because you got a guy who I think if he comes into this draft fully healthy, he's probably the 3rd quarterback off the board with a Heisman Trophy in his trophy case. But he obviously got hurt against South Carolina late in the season, so he won't be starting week 1. But Jared Goff, he had a pretty good year last year and probably is going to be in line for an extension if he plays well again. But you have Hendon Hooker there who can come, who can play, who's going to be ready probably around mid-season, maybe even later. But you have no rush on him to get in there. Maybe he sits for a year. Maybe he sits for 2 years behind Goff. But, whenever that opportunity comes for him to play, you got a pretty good quarterback that you were able to get in the 3rd round. Yeah. I don't think you would have been able to get Hendon Hooker in the 3rd anywhere near that, spot if he was healthy. So I think it's another great pick. That was one of my favorite drafts, honestly, this year, what Detroit did.
Really? Oh, and they sit there atop. You go to FanDuel Sportsbook, they're atop those NFC North rankings, especially with that deal now with Aaron Rodgers, which we'll get to, of course. We're talking too much about quarterbacks. You were a Christian Gonzalez guy, okay? You told me this before the draft. And we had 4 DBs taken in the 1st round. Talk to me about Christian going to New England. That's where you were drafted, my friend. We have to love the fit, because one thing I know, and let's take a look at this, outside of these 1st-round quarterbacks, Patriots rookie DBs in the Bill Belichick era. Hamilton, of course, being the genius that he is, pulled this up. Can we grab those guys? Can we take a look at those corners? Asante, Malcolm Butler, Darius Butler, you of course, J.C. Jackson, Logan Ryan, Jack Jones, Marcus Jones, all of these guys. What is it about Bill Belichick that gets the Malcolm Butlers of the world playing at the level that they do? Because you can make fun of, or you could say that Bill Belichick isn't good in the draft, but when it comes to drafting DBs, he has something.
Yeah, so I think Bill Belichick does a great job. Bill Belichick and co does a great job of putting the guys in position to do what they do best. And Christian Gonzalez does a lot of things well. He showed versatility in college where he could play on the inside, kind of the slot, and even back deep at safety. So if you know Bill, he's always versatile. He's always moving his chess pieces around. You got Jack Jones back. You signed the other Jones who almost left in free agency. You signed him back.
Marcus,
and now you have Duggar. Yeah, you have Duggar. You got Marcus Jones. You got a lot of athletes that can do a lot of different things in that secondary. So I think that'll be a great fit for Christian Gonzalez, who was my top corner off the board, but he'll be able to move around. And I think he probably has the best shot of going and getting a defensive rookie year like Sauce did last year because of these quarterbacks that he's going to be playing twice a year. You got Aaron Rodgers, you got Josh Allen, and then you got Tua. All these guys throw the ball, all over the yard, so he'll have plenty of opportunities to get his hand on the ball. He's
going to pull the sauce. The Gonzalez up there in New England, we love to see it, and they got him with a great value. So of the 1st-round defensive backs, of the 4 that I showed you, who do you think is the best match between player and team? Like, who fits the best?
I gotta go with the guy that came off the board first. And I talked about him, I think last time I was on here, Devin Witherspoon.
Let's go.
Smaller guy, undersized, not your prototype that you wanted a cornerback position, but he plays like he's 6'3", 250 pounds. He hits like a ton of bricks. He's feisty, he's sticky in coverage, and he's smart. He's smart as hell, okay? When you watch his film, you can tell that he studies and he knows and he anticipates what's coming. And that's a big part of making plays and making that transition to the league. So to have him paired up with Tariq Woolen, a guy that we talked about a lot last year on the show. He played in all-pro level as a rookie, I think 6 interceptions. You had Kobe Bryant, another rookie, played great in the slot. And then Quandre Diggs, who's one of my favorite deep safeties in all of football. So you're kind of trying to rebuild that LOB out there in Seattle. So I absolutely love that Devin Witherspoon pick at 5. People, they were surprised, a lot of people taking him at 5.
Yeah.
I loved it, though.
Well, he got the bump from coming on my show that morning. He came on and we did a whole wish in the fountain behind us in Kansas City, and it all worked out. So I'm a Seahawks gal, apparently. I'm the show of record that supports the Seahawks, what they do. And I think that they're going to be sneaky tough for the Niners to take care of in the West. I really do. With all the quarterback questions.
Got Jackson Smith, too.
100%. They're 2 guys, they walked onto my set together. They end up in Seahawks uniforms. I like it for both of them. And I think Pete Carroll's going to be really re-energized, and he might have something to say in the West. It'll be interesting in a watered-down NFC. Let's talk about the AFC gauntlet, right? So I'm thinking this morning, like, what do I want to ask Darius about Lamar? Because it's like, we're bored of it, right? But then I thought, okay, Darius loves himself some FanDuel Sportsbook. So somebody bring me the MVP odds that are sitting there already. So here's we're looking at them, right? Ooh. So as you can see, Lamar and Aaron are neck and neck. And it's probably going to switch a little this way, switch a little that way. I mean, they get the deal done with Jackson. They also draft Zay Flowers. We know about Odell. What do you make about these odds and how they're coming along?
Hey, okay, one thing about the sports book, I'm always looking for value.
Okay.
And Lamar Jackson, already a former unanimous MVP, coming into a year now where, hey, there were some questions about Lamar. Is he planning to kind of preserve himself, protect himself because they haven't given him his money yet? Could he come back and play? Now you have none of those questions going into this year. He's fully bought in. I thought he was fully bought in anyway, but now you got him. You bring over Odell Beckham. You draft Zay Flowers. You hopefully you get a healthy backfield, Gus Edwards and Dobbins. You got a great tight end room, obviously. You bring over a new offensive coordinator. That's going to be the thing I really keep an eye on with Lamar Jackson. How does he mesh with Todd Monken coming over from Georgia? Do they open up and pass the ball more, hopefully? And he's obviously going to always use his legs. So I think Lamar Jackson at plus 1,500 right now. Now, the AFC is a gauntlet.
Yes.
But I do think that's a great value pick right there on the sports
I'm
book.
a little surprised because I don't know if Lamar Jackson is stopping your golf game like Aaron Rodgers did. Listen, this deal finally goes through. This deal everyone knew was happening, and you were so excited about it. You reported on it from the golf course. Take a look at this. Come on now.
So I got the news fresh, the A-Rod news finally went through. And the whole NFL world was kind of waiting on that to go through. I had just got done, hitting my 18. I think I broke 100 for the first time this day, actually. So this was a
momentous
for my athletic career. Huge day. But that was big. And I think that Aaron Rodgers move and he's been showing. He's been kind of the toast of the town. Was at the Rangers game, was at the Knicks game. And I think he'll do some great things out there in New York. But I'm happy for him. And definitely happy for Lamar for getting his well-deserved check out there in Baltimore, man. Face of the Ravens, which he should continue to be.
He certainly will be for years to come now with that deal. Let's talk a little bit. You mentioned hockey there. Big weekend for South Florida. I don't know if the sky looked like you were in Florida, not crappy LA where I am. I don't know what, but you had a big weekend down there. The Heat take care of the Knicks. And then the Panthers, big Game 7 win over the Bruins. You're a big hockey guy?
Yeah, the big bad. Now, I'll tell you what, Boston as a city, as a sports city, I was drafted there, Patriots, the Celtics, the Bruins, the Sox. I mean, they've enjoyed a ton of success. Absolute great sports town. But I mean, nothing made me feel better than my Panthers upsetting the great Boston Bruins on their own ice. Game 7 after, getting the President's Cup. The President's Cup curse continues. Best regular season record ever. And my Florida Panthers, who nobody gave a chance. Nobody gave the Panthers a chance. to go in there and walk off fashion in overtime, game 7 in any sport, I'm tuned in. And they gave me everything I tuned in for. So shout out to my Cats. Moving on. The Heat, obviously, they got the Bucks out of there. We got our first win against the Knicks. The Marlins, I think we even swept the Cubs this past week. So it's good right now to be a fan of South Florida.
Everyone's talking New York. People are sleeping on Florida. Hamilton just texted me, the Bruins loss in NFL terms would be like if those 16-0 Patriots lost in their first round to a 7-9 team. Biggest upset in sports.
Correct. That's correct.
Your
Obviously,
Cats.
they weren't playing a wild card, but yeah, if they would have lost in that division, which, shout out to my Cats, baby.
I gotta
Swaggy.
say, I would like to see you play hockey. I think that would be a fun little GoPro moment. Are you a skater?
Maybe
Can you
some,
skate?
Maybe some deck hockey. I can roller skate. I can roll. I'm smooth on the rollerblades. Ice skating, I never got into that. My older brother, he had a bad accident. Well, not terrible. I mean, he got a nice little chunk out of his finger cut out with an ice skate. So I stayed away from those. Plus, I grew up in South Florida. It's not a bunch of, skating rinks down here.
Hamilton just come on the show. He goes, he'll be beating up some 6-year-old in the rink. We let him go do that.
Facts.
Like you usually do, just trying to.
I don't take it easy on anybody, all right?
You're the best.
Now I'm golfing, and when I'm out there with 70-year-old ladies just hitting the 5-iron, ding, 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 up the fairway, they don't take it easy on me either. So, hey, wherever we bump into each other, I'm going full speed.
We love to see it. Speaking of Florida, Miami, right? F1, Miami situation going on there. Who do you have winning it all?
I mean, you know what? It's going to be one of the Red Bulls. We just came off another Red Bull victory, but it wasn't Max Verstappen who won the Miami Grand Prix last year. This is the second time coming back to Miami. It was his teammate, Checo Perez. So shout out from Mexico. Perez got a big win last week in the Baku Grand Prix. And it'll be a battle between those two. You always give the edge to Max. But, Checo's right in it. I think it's a 6-point difference right now in the championship as far as that race goes. But I'm just looking towards a good race, at least between the two Red Bull cars. So I think it'll be one of those cars. And then Ferrari's kind of figured some stuff out. They got on the podium last week with Charles Leclerc.
Okay.
So hopefully we get a race between Ferrari, Aston Martin, and Mercedes behind those rocket ship Red Bulls. But it should be exciting. Miami's always a good time.
So Max Verstappen he's the favorite. He's opening as the favorite to win it. But
always.
So there's, this is going to sound so dumb, but you're just going to have to explain to me.
No such thing as a dumb question,
So
Ken.
there's more than one Red Bull car. So if one of them wins, it's an individual. I'm confused.
Yep, 20 cars on the grid, 10 teams. So each team has 2 drivers.
Okay.
Usually it's like an A driver and a B driver, and they're usually working in tandem. Right now, it's fair game for both the Red Bulls car. They're both allowed to race and try to win the championship. They both individually want the championship,
right.
And then there's another Constructors Championship, which is the team which has, combines both of the drivers' points, which they're going to run away with that. So now it's just about who wins the race out of those two. Honestly, with their car, with the car that they built, they kind of already won in that regard.
Yeah.
So it should be entertaining from that regard. And then you always, pay attention to whoever is your favorite driver or favorite team in the field.
Who shows up at F1 this weekend? Because you got this and the Derby going on,
man.
right? Where does Travis Kelce go? Does Travis Kelce hit up both? Because he's everywhere. It's a good question.
That's tough. So even on my own podcast, the Man to Man Pod, I'm going to the Grand Prix. And AB's going to the Derby.
Yeah.
So he'll have his hat on, so you might see him out there. That'll be interesting, though, because last year in Miami, Brady came, Tom Brady, which always goes to the Derby, Michael Jordan, David Beckham. So who knows who's going to come? That's a good question with the Derby and the Grand Prix being in the same week.
It's the private jet life, and then you can hit both in one day. And I remember one time Brady went to that and a fight in Vegas all in the same night. They did the Derby, got to Vegas in time to see a fight. So I think that they could definitely work both in. We appreciate you. Darius, I just learned, so F1 never made sense to me until right now. There's 2 cars for each team, 10 teams, 20 cars out there. Like, hello, it all makes sense. Red Bull was the favorite.
You should ask me an F1 question every week. And that way every week we just learn a little bit more.
I will, and I'm learning about the Derby because I know nothing, and I'm headed to the middle of Kentucky. We appreciate you, Mr. Butler, and thank you for all the insights on the quarterbacks and the DBs and the like. No, we will have more, not on the Miami Grand Prix. I was like, Grand Prix? What do we call it? I don't even know. We gotta go. We covered the NFL draft as best as we could, but you know who didn't even better job, I'm going to say, the nitty-gritty of it all, not eating donuts like I was, the Draft Network. And who better to recap the experience and the draft than their president and their CEO, Paige Dimakos. How are you, Paige?
Okay, I'm having a good day. It's I always like coming back the Monday after the draft, and I think I told you I'd cry when we talked about this last time, and I feel like I cried more this draft than ever before. So many great stories. I just love watching all these guys have their moments, and there were some funny moments, some definitely some laughter behind the scenes, because I feel like I'm getting smaller and they're just getting bigger. I'm like, what's happening, right? I'm like, why are all these guys just getting bigger? And
I feel the same way, except I feel like I'm getting older and they're getting younger. I'm like, who is Desi Banks? Who is Drewski? Like, I don't know who the hell these people are in anime and stuff. I'm like, what's going on here? But then Motley Crue was singing in back of me, so it brings me right back down to feeling like a young gal. All right, let's get into that. We'll get into some of the moments, but I want to take you, you know everything. So I'm going to get into the quarterback class. That's where I want to take you first. You know, lots of speculation on where these guys are going to land. Who do you think landed in the best spot if you take a look at where these QBs flew off the board?
Yeah, I think, you and I discussed it, a couple weeks before the draft happened, and it's Bryce Young, right? And I talked to a couple of members of their staff afterwards, and they kept going back to my favorite saying. They watched the tape, right? They watched the tape. They didn't fall in love with the hype. They didn't fall in love with the upside. They fell in love with what is the best possible option? Who is the best player that we have seen play football over the last 2 years? And it's Bryce Young. And I said it on the show, and I said it then, and I believe it now. He's generational as far as a human being, and I saw him that night. He was swagged up. He looked great. It's a perfect fit for them. He needs to revitalize that franchise, right? Coming off of that Matt Rule time. And it just, obviously left a bad taste in the owner's mouth, right? It was new, and that was that they were trying to make a splash. This was the right splash. And I think with Frank Reich and that offense and what they're going to do, this is going to be a really good fit. And that, in Carolina, they're going to fall in love with that. They're going to fall in love with it, and Panthers fans should be really happy.
I'm excited about that. Now, let's talk about some teams that crushed it, because I had Jackson Smith and Jigba walk onto set, and Devin Witherspoon. They both end up Seahawks, and I understand that you think that they had one of the best drafts of 2023. So give me the lowdown. Let's start with the Seahawks as your first team.
Yeah, I mean, you look at this board right here, just the first three, right? To walk away with Devin Witherspoon, JSN, and Derek Hall. Woo! I mean, just go there, right? And then I think you look getting some depth with the running back position, and you get Zach Charbonnet, and then you get Kenny McIntosh in your 7th round. And you look across the board here, and I like to look at, okay, who's getting some value? Okay. JSN's our number 1 overall wide receiver. So for us at the Draft Network, to walk away at, at 20 with him and your top corner on your board, that looks pretty good, right? Okay. Now you got Tariq Woolen, you got Devin Witherspoon, you've got JSN. This is a young, revitalized team, and man, John Snyder and that Seahawks organization, they just kind of flip the script so quickly, and that's really hard to do in that post-Russell Wilson era in Seattle.
And a magical storyline with Geno Smith, Pete Carroll. Is he going to hang it up anytime soon? It certainly doesn't look like it with this revitalized young roster, especially that tandem that you mentioned with Witherspoon and Tariq Woolen. We love that. Let's get another team that you loved with the draft. I wanted the Eagles to take Bijan, but you still like what they did.
I do. At the end of the day, Atlanta took him, right? They get him at 8. They move up a spot and get, for my money, the best defensive player on the board. Jalen Carter is absolutely unbelievable. I talked to his teammates, Keely Ringo, who ended up falling and ended up on this roster as well. And I asked, you've been on this national championship team over the last 2 years, and they've been, you look around that room and it's NFL player, NFL player, NFL player, right? And I said, who's the best player? I didn't even get the question out before Keely said Jalen Carter. Yeah. And to me, if you watch what he does on tape, he impacts the game at a level that is absolutely insane. To watch him is to watch just magic on the football field, and then getting to speak with him afterwards. So soft-spoken, was so kind. To see this big guy come over to me and tell me that he canoes in his free time, I was like, you go canoeing? I have to see a photo of evidence of you as this large man in a canoe. And he started laughing. We had such a fun time post draft. He's such a nice kid. And yeah, I was very happy to see that he went there and to get him at 9. And listen, Howie Roseman, he's just playing chess.
Yeah.
Like I looked at this and I went, man, you get the camaraderie of all those Georgia Bulldogs in one locker room, right? And it matters. They're gonna be chanting together, hanging out. They get a steal of the draft with Keely Ringo dropping to them. They're just, I think the rest of the league is gonna be really upset that they let Jalen Carter go there, right? And that they let Keely Ringo go there. And across the board, you look at that team and you go, okay, they filled the gaps, and Jalen Hurts has got to be really happy.
And then they add DeAndre Swift, who also has camaraderie and some stuff there, and they need to fill that Miles Sanders role. So well done all around by the Eagles in a watered-down, sort of soulless NFC until somebody steps up. And maybe it is the Seahawks, who I wanted to draft Anthony Richardson. To me, he was perfect. He'll sit behind our boy Geno Smith. He'll learn from Pete Carroll. He's got great receivers, a great infrastructure. That didn't happen because the Colts snagged him. Darius Butler thinks Anthony Richardson should start day one. I think it should be Minshew, but you like what this Colts Steichen vibe did.
I did, and I was laughing listening to the two of you go back and forth, because it's like you get the hype train from the player and the logic from you, right? And I was like, I like where K sits. You know, you get excited about your new guy in the locker room, but the reality is Seattle would have taken him at 5 if he was there, and that's why I really liked that Seattle had a plan after that changed. And for this team, I think this was a kind of show not tell moment. Everybody in the scouting world has loved the Colts for such a long time, but this last year or two, the script started to change. They didn't draft a quarterback. People started to kind of question what was going on there, and I feel like they came out hot and went, okay, watch this, right? And this was a big draft. Julius Brents, saw him down at the Senior Bowl. Really great player. Loved, he was talking exactly how I like to see my DBs and corners talk. He was making sure he was getting in the faces of all the wide receivers. Josh Downs, a speedy, rated rookie for Panini. Loved Josh. Got to spend a lot of time with him. So yeah, Evan Hull, another Senior Bowl kid. Have spent a lot of time. I think the depth here at that roster class, they really were able to add. And man, Anthony Richardson, how do you not look at the kid and go, yeah, you're just physically better than most human beings. I'm just like, we are not the same.
I know. I would have taken him number 1 overall, but that's why I'm not a GM. You mentioned what you did with Panini. You had a collab with them and a rated rookie. You were revealing trading cards. But I want to, you had spent a lot of time, and shout out to the Draft Network, which you've pushed yourself into this place where you're getting FaceTime with these guys, and that matters. It really does. You're talking to Jackson Smith and Jigba. You're talking to Bijan Robinson. And there's so many moments that lead up to the draft before it happens and then it takes over. Tell me what moments stood out to you, and give me that one that made you cry, because I know it happened, Paige.
Man, that's there's so many great moments. I think this moment with JSN that you're watching on camera, I got to meet him at the Super Bowl. We were a part of his experience for a long time. I really got to, you feel invested in their overall success, right? And I think that's, for me, he was a kid who was kind of being doubted because it was a recency bias, right? You haven't seen him play football. He was out for the season, and people were forgetting. It's like, yeah, but did you watch him in the Rose Bowl put up the greatest game in Ohio State wide receiver history, right? You're like, okay, maybe there's something that we're all forgetting. And he remembered that. He remembered that. And when he got drafted and he came back and he gave me a hug and he goes, "That's my girl." And I was like, dude, I'm so happy for you, right? To watch that whole journey and that whole process. And then Jalen Carter telling me about the canoe, right? It's something about that guy, as large as he is, being in a canoe, I was dying of laughter. And we had a great moment watching him and Will Anderson have a moment together behind the scenes. Like, you forget how much time even competitors spend together. So it was really cool to see all that backstage and be a part of their special night.
It's so cool, and it's so much optimism, and all 32 teams are improving and getting better, and that their dreams are coming to fruition in front of their eyes, at least until the real action starts. But they're vibing together, and it's just a day of celebration. It's so true. Like, the picking apart ends draft weekend, and I think everybody sort of has that mindset of being present, and it's really beautiful and really, really, really well described by you. And I love that you're present and grateful for those moments, because that's what they are. That's what they really are. Paige Dimakos, you can check her out on the Draft Network. Lots of coverage there with Rated. She's rocking the T-shirt and Panini, which we love. We're going to meet these rookies, and you can check them out and learn more about them with Paige over at the Draft Network. We'll be back. Hamilton joining us to recap the show. Darius Butler wanting Anthony Richardson to be the day one starter. No one loves Anthony Richardson more than I do, but that's a little nutty, right?
Yeah, and nobody loves, sitting quarterback prospects to start off their careers more than you either, because, and I think you got to take it by case basis. And what you said about Richardson is 100% correct. He's a guy that needs some developing, needs some seasoning. He's incredibly talented, but I think he would benefit from sitting for a little bit and getting that chance to develop. We've seen how much it's benefited a bunch of quarterbacks. You can go back through the last 20, 30 years. It's benefited a lot of top-tier quarterbacks.
Now that said,
getting that chance to sit.
Now that said, I talked myself into Levis starting in the middle of the segment, because I was like, in the morning meeting, I go, what are the chances? This guy's third string. Like, why are we even asking about Levis? Like, we wish him luck. He'll probably have a great story. We were always rooting for anybody. But it kind of makes sense to get him out there if things are not looking great, because they cannot pick a quarterback for the third year in a row. It cannot.
Yeah, and I think you got to give Tannehill a chance to start the season. You see if you can recapture what this team has been with him, for the majority of the last 3.5 years before that collapse in the second half of last season. But if it starts off rough again, you're right. You have to see what you have in Levis, because honestly, it wouldn't be the worst thing to draft a quarterback for the third. Obviously, you don't want to get in that situation, but you at least want to see what Levis can do on the field before you have to make that call, right? Because they got their sample size of Malik Willis. It doesn't seem like that was really a fit. We'll see what happens with Levis, but yeah, you want to get a chance to be able to evaluate him.
Yeah, well done by you. We had so much fun. We're going to keep unpacking the draft and all the angles as they move forward. We're done with where they went. We're just talking about their future now as we set the agenda and the tone for you guys out there that are the NFL fans. We'll see you tomorrow. Who do we have tomorrow? I don't even know. Gronkster on the show.
We have Gronk.
And then we head to Kentucky.
Yeah.